Hey, I got a quick question for you. Are you showing up as the expert authority in your business, making sure that your message is on point and your branding is reflective of your go-to authorityness? Hi, I'm Christine Blosdale, your expert authority business coach, and I have a way for you to rate your expert authority prowess. And you can check it out at expertauthorityquiz.com. It's fun, it's easy, and it's something that you really should be doing to see where you level up. If you want to establish trust with your audience and potential customers and clients, you might want to take this quiz. Once again, head on over to expertauthorityquiz.com. That's expertauthorityquiz.com.
Welcome to Out of the Box with Christine, the podcast for conscious entrepreneurs. Are you willing to step into your greatness? Are you ready to shine? Well, get ready, truth seeker. You're in for an amazing ride. And now, here's the host of the show, Christine Blosdale.
Welcome back to Out of the Box with Christine. I am your host, Christine Blosdale, your expert authority business coach, and I help overwhelmed entrepreneurs who are struggling with too much overwhelm running their business. They got to be a marketing genius. They got to be a copywriter. They got to be an accountant, all those different things. Well, I help ease those worries by getting you on the road and expanding your expert authority. And today I am super happy about having my guest on. Like, when I said you were my doppelganger, you are somebody you're preaching the sermon from the Mount that I have been preaching. So
Yay.
it just feels so good to meet another who understands the power of being a guest on podcasts and how you can repurpose your content. So I want to welcome to the show Lyndsay Phillips, who is not only the founder of Smooth Business Podcasting, she's also the host of her own podcast, and it's called the Leverage Your Podcast Show, which just says it all, doesn't it? Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. You have such great energy and a super positive attitude. And so I'm grateful to be in your space.
Well, I am just, like I said, I'm so happy that I ran across you because this is something that is so important. And, it's that thing like when you're a parent, okay, and you tell your kids, you need to do this. It's really important to do this. And they don't listen to you. But a stranger comes out of this is how it is with my clients sometimes, right? They'll come back to me and go, I heard this Lyndsay lady. She said that it's important for you. I'm just like, it's like,
what a great idea.
Like, yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about First of all, having your own podcast is number one, brilliant, right? Great, wonderful way to market your business. But then on the flip side, being a guest on podcasts, that's really powerful. Why don't you just tell the listeners a little bit about your philosophy on this and what you do working with your clients to get them the most out of their podcast guesting?
Mm-hmm. You bet. I mean, as soon as you're a guest on someone's show, you instantly have credibility, right? You're instantly trusted because you're being brought into someone's community and someone's circle. Like, you're pre-vetted. So your audience automatically thinks I'm awesome because I'm on your show. And so, which is obviously a wonderful opportunity. And it's just a way to get that exposure and get that visibility on steroids because the host already has a captive audience, and not just with their podcast, right? Like, there's their email and their social. And so to be able to be put in front of a captive audience that already is your ideal client versus throwing spaghetti against a wall and hoping it sticks. I mean, that is a huge opportunity that you can leverage with the right strategies and leveraging the heck out of it.
Yeah. And not to mention also something that I try and reiterate to my clients is that your SEO, your search engine optimization goes through the roof, because instead of you're just, yelling into a silo of, look at me, you get to be on someone else's podcast show. Then you're in their show notes. If they put it on YouTube as a video, you're in those show notes, you're in the description, your name, many times your website. I always make sure that make sure that my website is listed on the show notes as well. So you're out there and you're reaching people, especially if that host is really good about posting that content and promoting that episode, correct?
100%. And one of the myths, though, Christine, is thinking that, oh, I'll get exposure and I don't need to do anything because the host is doing all the heavy lifting. I'm
Uh-huh.
tapping into their audience. I'll answer a bunch of questions and then, my work is done. It's like,
Good night.
no, I know. Not only are you killing your relationship with the host, but you're killing your opportunities and you're also, how do I say it, losing control over your own exposure and your like how you're being positioned. And every host isn't created equal, right? Like you do
Right.
create amazing content and thank you for that. But some hosts don't necessarily know how to promote. Or so I've been on shows way back when where they didn't even let me know it went live.
Right.
And it's like I don't get it.
That's
It
happened to me.
happens.
That's happened to me. I know. And it was a big show.
I know. And
Yeah.
you're like, what happened? And like years ago, I've, been a guest on shows and the title that they picked was really weird. It was just like a spin on my name. Their show notes had like my bio, but it didn't have any enticing information as to what the conversation was about. So the audience like had no reason to listen really because they had
Right.
no clue what it was about. And so I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like now what? Right? I'm hooped. And then and some people have made reels, but the reel was like some weird joke that was told in the interview. Like it had nothing
Nothing
to
to
do
do.
with my expertise.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I can't share this. Like it's just so bizarre. So I'm like, okay, there has to be a way for me to still promote it and honor the host, showcase the podcast, obviously, but also to take control back over how I'm positioning my authority, my branding, and how I'm showing up. So that's why I created my podcast leverage system that I use for hosts and guests, because I'm like, nope, I can create my own blog. I can create my own YouTube. I can create my own images. And if I ask for the raw video, I can create my own reels. And that way I'm using it, for content. And just then I have control over how I'm being positioned.
And you think about it, if I've been on a focused journey the last 3 months, so the last quarter of the year, really focusing on being a guest on podcasts. I've 20 years in radio, so I've interviewed thousands of people, and then almost 10 years with podcasting where I've interviewed, not thousands, but a lot of people.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a switcheroony that I am the guest, right? And so the last 3 months I've been focusing on getting guesting spots on podcasts. And you think about it, there's so much content that you have spoken. Of course, you have the podcast host asking you questions, but a lot of times it's you. It's you
Mhm.
going on a monologue or talking about a solution to a problem or how you work with clients and things like that. So all of that content, you can repurpose that because that's you. That's you. That's your voice. That's your words.
100%.
And you could repurpose that into blogs, like you say, reels, even if you wanted to pull some things, quotes, and put it chapters in a modules in a course or chapters in a book,
Mhm.
you could do that. So that's so valuable. And also one thing too, I know that's really important as we're talking about, sometimes those podcast hosts don't don't promote the episode or don't know how to really pluck your expertise out and showcase you,
Mhm.
right? And so it's our job to do that. How long have you been podcasting, Lyndsay? It was several years now.
I suck at years and my memory.
All right,
I want to
podcasting
say
language,
like
seasons.
I know 10 years, I guess.
Okay. So you and I both, we're
Long
old school.
enough.
We're old school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're professionals, right, in this thing. And when you'll find sometimes when you get booked on a podcast as a guest, sometimes those people are not, they're green, they're brand new at it, bless their little hearts. And so it might be a clunky, uncomfortable interview where they're looking at their notes, and they've got their questions, they've got their 10 questions, and they're not going to deviate from that. And so it's upon us to also make that interview, to take ownership of that. as well,
Mm-hmm.
especially for someone who's been in the business for quite some time. I do love it when they have a list of questions and you answer a question and then they go to the next one. And even though if what you said was like, I invented gold, they just go, yes. So I understand that. And I'm like, did you just hear what I
I
said?
haven't had that in a long time, thank God.
Oh,
Knock on wood.
but I encourage everybody. I encourage people to create podcasts. So everybody's got to start somewhere. But how do
I
you
know
deal
they
with those
do.
or if you have a host that's just not what you thought you were gonna be
Yes,
speaking to?
that is such a great question. I know, because I hear all the time, like, oh my God, the host just went rogue. And like, I didn't want to talk about my journey. I wanted to talk about this. But here's one of the myths, actually, and that your one sheet could actually be the culprit to creating that.
Mm,
Because your one sheet, like you've got your topics, typically you've got like what, 7 questions on the bottom of it, but they're like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit about my journey, one about this topic, one about that. And so by default, the host doesn't know any better, so they pick that up and then they ask those questions. Well, it's
right.
a bit of a mismatch. So I teach my clients to definitely create topics ahead of time, but also create interview questions for every single topic that you have. I call them the conversation compass or your interview GPS, because by giving the host those questions, you're empowering the host to ask the right questions. Not that you want to have a scripted conversation, but like at least they can see, oh, they're going to cover these things. Oh, I want to give my audience that value. I want to talk about that. So at least they'll have it in their mind. But even as a guest, you can say, oh, that's a great question. I just want to backtrack a little bit just to kind of lay the foundation so that they're going to understand it better.
Right.
And here's the real problem that guests have. Let me start there if that's okay. They're
Yes.
going to, of course. And then you can kind of lay that foundation. So there are kind of like tricks that you can do to steer the conversation in a way that'll help you showcase your expertise and be seen as the solution.
And what you say here is so important. And for everyone that's listening who is excited about the concept or the idea of being a podcast guest, or you're like, I'm at the point where I have to be on podcast to get the word out. It's a great marketing tool. It is. It's fabulous. But here's the thing. She had mentioned a press kit, right? Or one sheet. She said one
Hmm.
sheet. We call it different things in the industry. So
Different
there's
names,
there's
100%.
one sheet, there's a media kit, there's a press kit, there's an what do they call it? Electronic press kit, EPK, you name it. This is the thing when I work with my clients, and it does not matter if they even say I want to be a guest on podcast. I don't care. I say immediately when we're working together to establish your expert authority, we have to create a media kit for you.
Yeah.
And that media kit really helps people because it gives them a blueprint to say,
Hmm.
this is who I am, right? This is my title, how I go, the queen of whatever you want to call yourself, expert authority coach, or the repurposing queen, or whatever you want to call yourself. But it's like, almost like a model or an actor has to have a press kit or media kit.
Yeah.
And this is your glorified business card that you're handing out to people. And you're hoping that when they look at your media kit, they go, wow, this person
Hmm.
I would love to have a conversation with because they're experts in this, that, and the other. Here's some suggested topics. When you make it easier for a podcast host or producer to have you on, the less work they have to do, the better. If they got to hunt and search
Yeah.
and research you and do a
No,
thesis on you, forget it. They're not going to do it. So when you have
100%.
those topics and you have those questions, and you also have the places, that they can find you on the internets, right?
Makes
If
it
you
so easy, right?
It
Just give them
makes it
that link.
easy. So it's like a glorified business card, those things. And that's the first thing I create with my
Yeah,
clients. Because once you have that,
100%.
then you know who you are. Because sometimes people
Hmm.
don't know who they are.
You're
You know,
so right.
it's like, what do you do for a living? Oh, what do I not do? I do everything, right? I help
Oh,
everybody with everything. And I'm like, no,
no,
no. Yeah, the
no.
opposite of
And then
that.
when people are scouting out your site, I mean, they'll see your press page or whatever you want to call it and your picture, and they're like, ooh, oh, so they already guest on podcasts or they already speak on stages. They're considered a guest expert. It's just that Okay, they don't have to be like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? Oh, I don't know.
They want to know that you can, when the, well, like it used to be in the olden days in radio, when the on-air light goes on, you're not going to freeze. You actually
Uh-huh.
can have a conversation. You actually will add value to the show, which is, I think, is really important.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. I'm so happy you've come into my universe. Can we talk about too? Let's talk about when you do land that guest spot, and for the most part things usually go really well and it's fantastic, but what, talk about the when things don't go so well. In other words, maybe the host is very green, so to speak. How do you handle that, or how do you have your clients handle that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you do want to vet the show, right? I mean, you don't want to be on the show for the sake of being on a show. You
Yeah.
really want to be on a show where you're going to be put in front of your ideal client, your avatar. You're also going to want to be on a show where you're going to jive with the host, right? If they're like super flamboyant and you're super quiet and shy, there's just not going to be that energy between you, or, the opposite. Or if they have a style of show that is, I don't know, just like not your personality, or they're just talking about the journey and the stories, and you're like, that's not my jive. Like, I want to showcase my expertise. I want to help podcast guests. And like, do they have 2 episodes, or do they have 30 episodes, or do they have 300 episodes? And so you just kind of want to do that vetting. I mean, and when you're starting out, sure, you need practice and get your mojo and so forth, but you really want to do that vetting beforehand
Yeah.
so that you're spending your time wisely and you're making great connections.
And I suggest highly, before the pitch. I mean, there's one thing about getting booked on the show, but if you do get booked on somebody's show, make sure you listen to a few of the episodes. You know, it's like somebody saying, I want to date you, I want to date you, and they're like, and you're like, but you don't know me, you've never listened to my
Yeah.
show. Listen to the show, listen to it a couple different episodes, or even go through the episode lineup that they have, and find a show that is somewhat in your niche. If they're talking
Yes,
about
that's what I
marketing or
do.
things like that. Exactly, me the same here, to feel how they're interacting
Yeah.
with guests as well, and all of that great stuff. What about, so once you've been a guest, what do you tell your clients about promoting their episode? Like, what are some things that you
Mm.
suggest that they do, other than maybe post it on social media? Hey, I was a guest on this great show. What are some other things?
Yeah, so I always start with publishing. So my podcast leverage system is publish for results, distribute for exposure, and then repurpose and then multiply. So, but with guests, it's like tweaked a little bit, right? So publish for results. What I mean by that is I always ask for the raw video and say that I want to be able to give more exposure to your podcast and really get it out there and promote it. So I do put the raw video in my own YouTube channel to help grow that, create the thumbnail, create the copy, use the keywords, and it's okay to change the title that the host gives you so that it fits those keywords. Because sometimes the host, their title is maybe not what you would want to focus the title on, right? Then I also create a blog post. So I embed the video, I create the show notes, and when you create show notes, I really like to focus on A, it being interactive, and B, kind of like hitting all the points for how people learn. I like to skim and read. Or watch. I actually prefer watching podcasts on YouTube versus listening, but everyone's different.
Yeah.
So obviously embed the audio if you can. And then again, with having a whole blog post, timestamps, bullets of like what you can
Yeah.
take away so that it's enticing the reader, listener, whoever you want to call them. You've got all that content to be able to not only SEO the page, just like you brought up earlier, but then also on that blog post, there's two things. One is when you have content on your website, not only does Google love you for it, but you also have a place to direct traffic. Obviously, I give backlinks to the host and so forth. But when someone else is going to your website and they see all these blog posts of where you're guesting on this show, that show, they're like, ooh, gosh, she's like everywhere. Well,
Yeah.
that's instant credibility. The second point is that the real estate of the page where you have the blog post, you should have sidebars for call to action. So whether it's a lead magnet, your Facebook group, a webinar that you've got coming up, and then also break up some of the text with some call to action graphics that you have so that you have a bigger opportunity of converting those listeners, those readers to get onto your e-list. So that is the first place I start.
Awesome. I love that. I had someone was giving me a really great tip because the last 3 months focusing on being a podcast guest, and I really wanted to I wanted to show on my website all of the different podcasts that I've been on. Well, when you're reaching 30, 40 podcasts, that's a lot. And for a while I was embedding each episode into the website, and it would take up a little chunk of space. Well, my page was looking like
it's a lot. Yeah.
I was going, look, those things when you have to put your birth date, and I have to go 1964. So I got to go.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. And I go, oh, that's really frustrating. And I got this great tip from this woman. She said, you know what you do? She said, Spotify, you can create a playlist. And I said, I said, yeah, I know. Because I have a playlist. I have a workout playlist. And I have a dance playlist.
Yeah.
And I have a meditation playlist. She goes, well, why don't you have a playlist of all your podcast appearances?
So
and I said,
smart, right?
What? You can embed that into your, you can post that in LinkedIn or wherever, your playlist. And people love signing up for playlists and, listening to podcast episodes.
And binge. Yep.
And binge. And also you can arrange them. So,
that part I didn't know.
Yes. So let's say you were on a podcast show last year, whatever, but it was the best show. The host nailed you. Like, you were like, oh my God, this is required listening for anybody that wants to work with me. Right. There's been a couple shows that have been that way this season. So you can arrange it and move them up. So, or if it's a huge show and they got a lot of listeners and that logo, that cover art of that show is very familiar to people, it's recognizable brand, then put that puppy up there. Right. And so now that's what I have. And you don't have, it's an internal scroll. You don't have to have your page go forever and ever and ever.
100%. And it's like, it is easy to do. I've done that for one of my clients. I haven't done it for me for whatever reason. Not enough time.
Well, girl, what are you waiting on?
I know I should do that. Actually, okay, you've inspired me to now update my podcast page where I should do that.
Yeah. Wow, it's just been so wonderful having you on the show. I could talk to you forever, and I want to have you back on as well. How do people get in touch with you and absorb your content and all that great stuff? Because I feel that right now folks are motivated, they maybe just don't know where to start. So where can people find out more about you?
True enough. Thanks for asking. So they can go to smoothbusinesspodcasting.com. That's my main hub. And of course, where the Leverage Your Podcast show is. But if they are really looking into figuring out how to repurpose the shows that they guest on so that they've got more authority boosting content, they can go to leverageyourpodcast.com/guest and grab that free resource just to, it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be complicated, but as long as you're making a few steps to repurpose, and then, you can attract clients and leads.
So what is that last one? Was leverageyourpodcast.com/guest. .com/guest. And what will they find there again? What was it that they'll find there?
Yep. So it's like a guide and checklist for 3 ways to leverage and repurpose their guest interviews.
That's great. So they can print that off, and when they do their podcast guesting, they can check things off. I like that. I like lists. I'm a list person.
So do I. I'm obsessed.
Oh, thank you so much for being with me today, Lyndsay.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And we're gonna collaborate and work together in many ways, because we are the same family here. We understand the power of being a guest on a podcast. But remember, folks, like we're saying, don't just be that guest. And it's like eating dinner and leaving. You're at a guest at somebody's house. They make you a beautiful meal. and you just get up out of the table and you take off out of the door. Make sure that you follow up and that you promote that episode and that you tell everybody how wonderful that host was, how talented they were, smooth them over a little bit. Make
That's
sure
a great
that you promote
analogy.
it. And then that way you'll be invited back, but more importantly, it's good karma. It comes back to you.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Oh yeah.
Trust me.
100%.
100%. All right, love. Take care so much. And thank you again, wonderful listeners, for joining us. If you got something out of this and you want to share this episode, please do. Don't be stingy. Don't keep it to yourself. Share this on your social media. And if you want more information about the coaching work that I do, you can go to expertauthoritycoach.com. If you want to test out your expert authority-ness and you think I'm an expert authority in my field, well, you can take the quiz. And the quiz is 10 questions that you should be asking yourself anyway. And they get you thinking, and they're really fun to actually answer. So that's at expertauthorityquiz.com. That link will be in the show notes, as well as all of the links from my wonderful guest today, Lyndsay Phillips. Thanks again. And as I always say, remember to think outside that box. Until next time, bye for now.